Well, today we're looking at the second generation of the Chevy Volt, not to be confused with the upcoming Bolt, which is a pure electric car with a range of 383 kilometers. This second generation Volt has the ability to go 80 kilometers and then switch with the onboard gasoline generator to provide current to the electric motor, but that gives you much longer range. You can go hundreds and hundreds of kilometers, even take it on a road trip on the highway if you wanted to. It gives you great flexibility. But this calls into question the future of this vehicle. With the Bolt coming with a similar kind of price to this vehicle, it's going to be interesting to see if people embrace that almost 400 kilometers of range or want this sort of halfway measure car. This definitely gives you more flexibility, but I'm seeing a trend towards people wanting pure electrics and not just partway measures. Now on styling, I kind of like the first generation more. It had an edgy look to it. This one just looks like a Chevy Cruze to me. Around the back, I don't like the design of the rear hatch. Across the back of the hatch, there's no glass, so seeing from the back out is kind of limiting, and the lift-in height is rather high, making it a little bit tricky to live with. The shape makes it look like everything else on the road. It doesn't stand out, and I kind of think electric cars should look a little bit quirky. On the inside is an improvement, but it's not perfect. Now let's go through the good stuff first before I get to a few drawbacks in my opinion. The dashboard has been updated. It has a beautiful 8-inch screen in the center, and General Motors interfaces with your phone and the way they work is about one of the simplest and very easy to understand. There's a readout in there that shows you how the vehicle is driving, whether it's just on battery power using the electric and the assist of the generator, what have you. Lots of screens inside the center cluster as well. The previous version had this touch-sensitive dashboard, almost like Cadillac's Q system. It wasn't responsive, it wasn't very clean, and this is much better, so that's good news. Now the back seat is an issue. They have added a seat in the back. And basically they've added seat belts and made it sort of legal to have somebody sitting and buckled up in there. They're going to have to be a very short child because you have to get in and then climb over top of the hump in the middle. And then as you can see, I'm hunched over because my head is going to hit the roof. So it would have to be a quite small child to sit in the middle. This has been one of the major drawbacks compared to, say, the Nissan Leaf and the upcoming Bolt. Is a conventional sort of small hatchback design that really is simple, and those vehicles have the battery running along the floor of the car. This one has the T-shape running through the center and behind the back seats, and that's why this car has its certain shape. Now maybe the next generation of Volt or an upcoming version of Volt will have a pancake style battery underneath, but right now they're using this T system and it really limits the shape of the vehicle. Now there were two versions of this car. There's the LT that's about $38,500, and then the Premier that's at $42,500. That Premier version adds heated seats in the back, which is a nice feature, and some added safety features, but pretty much the LT version is going to give you all the things you need. My complaint about the design of the interior, other than the back seats, is it really looks inexpensive. Now sure, they're trying to shave costs to keep the price down because right here the battery is the most expensive part of the vehicle. It just looks like a sea of hard black plastic in here. It doesn't look particularly good. It certainly doesn't feel that great. So they've shaved costs on this car and it kind of shows on the inside. Now before we get going, I want to tell you a little story about when I picked this car up. I picked it up from a large GM dealer near me, and it hadn't been charged, basically at 1 kilometer of range. And these sorts of things can happen if you're using your electric car a lot, and maybe you've been doing a lot of errands, going farther than you typically would, and you come back, and then you want to, say in an emergency, have to jump in your car and drive again, but it hasn't had a chance to be plugged in, then you're basically stuck. But with the Volt, not an issue, because after that 1 kilometer of driving, the gasoline generator came on and then produced electricity to charge the battery and the drive unit to get you going. And that is where this car excels. It's for people who want an electric car, now an improved range from about 55 kilometers with the old one to 80 kilometers now. But in those emergency situations where you have to use the vehicle and it hasn't had a chance to charge, you can jump in and drive a couple of 100 kilometers if you needed to, no problem at all. So the drive unit is lighter by 45 kilograms. The battery pack is lighter by 9 kilograms, and that helps get you that extra range. Also, the cells are smaller and lower down inside the cabin, giving you a more planted feel on the road. This car is no slouch either. It'll go to 96 kilometers an hour or 60 miles an hour in just 8.4 seconds. And the run time to about 50 kilometers an hour has been improved by 20%. So that's when you're stopped like I am now, and then you accelerate away quickly, a little bit of wheel spin. The run to about 50 kilometers an hour is 19% better. So that is one of the advantages of electric. On top of that, you have drive modes: normal, sport, mountain, and also hold, which means you could hold your charge and use the gasoline generator and save that battery power for later. Now, on top of that, they've added a regenerative braking paddle behind the steering wheel. Driving in traffic, you can hold this and it uses the regenerative braking to slow you down, giving more energy back into the battery pack, therefore extending the available electricity into the car. But on the electricity front, I want to tell you another story. So the car, as I mentioned, was discharged when I got it, and then I got it home and I plugged it in for 12 hours and I only got 50 kilometers of range, and I had to drive out into the suburbs and back, and I ate through that 50 kilometers of range very quickly. But that's where the onboard generator saved me. I just drove back using the power from the generator and not relying on the battery pack. If I had had the Bolt with 383 kilometers of range, it wouldn't have been a problem. What I'm really getting at is you need to upgrade your house. You're not just buying one of these cars and using a regular 120 volt system. You need to upgrade your home and get a 220 volt electric charging station in your garage if you want to be able to use this regularly, because 12 hours and 50 kilometers of range in my world wouldn't cut it. So the Chevy Volt starts at $38,500, and they have the Premier version, which is $42,500. The upcoming Bolt is going to start around 42 grand in Canada. Then you add in the incentives, 8,500 possibly in Ontario, 8,000 in Quebec, and 5,000 in British Columbia. That drops the price down substantially. Now that Bolt is going to be around 42 grand, and it has a more useful shape, a proper 3-person back seat, a better cargo, easier to use liftgate, and I think a design that makes it more livable every day, plus almost 400 kilometers of range. It's going to be interesting to see what General Motors does with the Volt. Will they phase it out and go to pure electric cars, or keep this sort of 80 kilometer range with the onboard generator as an option for people? The good news, as of now, you can buy both.